pattern. Numerous under seal filings by the defense, bonding out after pleading guilty, long delays between adjudication of guilt and sentencing. So you can kind of work out just by like kind of a traffic analysis who's an informant or not. So I think that's quite interesting. I don't know what else to say. You know, I had issues with people informing against me in several instances. I never became an informant against people in my federal cases because, again, I felt that that was the wrong thing to do. And I think in some cases you have to look to what the person is doing. If you knew your next door neighbor was killing children and burying them in the backyard, would you inform against that person? Probably, right? You know, if somebody's killing people, right? Probably. But I think there's... Probably? Yeah, probably, yeah, probably. Like, for sure. Yeah, so, I mean, you gotta look at, well, what is that person really doing? I guess it's very subjective. And then how do you handle, if you go and inform against the serial killer neighbor and you go off and your intention is just to do it to, for example, read about the situation in the media or something like that. Maybe that's the wrong reason. Maybe if the reason was really to protect other kids from being victimized by this fictitious serial killer, you know, maybe that's a better reason. One of the best reasons, you know, maybe is if you have to protect yourself. For example, if I were to come to you, for example, and admit that I just robbed the bank across the street, technically, if the government found out that I told you and you had knowledge of that, you're what they call an accessory after the fact.
Or misprision of a felony.
Yeah, misprision of a felony, which means you could be prosecuted and sentenced for the same behavior as what you attempted to conceal.
Okay.
So,
I hate to break in.
On to Bernie.
We have a lot of ground to cover. We have a 90-minute panel today, which is great, but we have so much to cover and so many people to talk to. Just joining us is Fiber Optic. Some of you may remember him. Yeah. And there's more coming too. But right now, Bernie, if you could briefly give some slight presentation here, and we'll keep moving. What's that?
Oh, that's the. There's a part of our federal government called the United States Sentencing Commission, and they come up with deciding how long people should be locked up for various deeds, and it's all broken down to a formula. It's amazing what an infrastructure we have for this sort of thing. But that's a sentencing table, and if you look further down, you'll see that along the vertical axis of the sentencing table, you see a base offense level, which is a number from 1 up to, I think it goes up to like 43. And then along the horizontal axis of the chart is a criminal history score, depending on your prior offenses, whether misdemeanors or felonies, that's scored as well. And where they intersect is a range of months that the federal government will put you in prison. You can see the low end is like 0 to 6 months, and then at the high end you have 210 to 262 months, or in the lower right-hand corner you see a bunch of things that have letters in them, like 360 months, which is like 30 years, to dash LIFE, 30 to life. I spent a bunch of time in U.S. Marshals custody while waiting for go to court hearings in the federal building in Philadelphia, and guys would come back from their trials or whatever, and everybody would ask, well, what'd you get? And they'd come back, I got letters. And that meant, it's a young guy you're just talking to, 20 years old, and you just found out he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison for whatever. You don't ask what they did or accused of. It's not polite. It's bad form, but it has an impact on you. You just meet a young person who just said they got letters. So anyway, this is what the federal government hands out to people. And when people know they're facing this sort of thing, what you think you normally would do in a situation sometimes goes out the window. So that's the sentencing guidelines. When people are facing that, they also sometimes will get what's called a proffer letter. The federal government will, let me open this thing up here, send you a letter saying, hey, we maybe haven't charged you yet, but you're a person of interest, and if you tell us some information here, we will give you various kinds of immunity, so you won't get prosecuted for things as long as you tell us about everything. And if someone's looking at letters or smaller numbers but significant numbers locked in a cage, you might consider doing that. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying that's the kind of pressure that people can be under. And here's a copy of a proffer letter from the Department of Justice to somebody. This was one I found at random at Google. And I also wanted to show what the federal government... bear with me here a second. There it is, 5K1.1. Here we go. Downward departures. In the federal sentencing, I call this all a part of the informant infrastructure of our government, our country. You see something called substantial assistance to authorities, or 5K1.1. And basically it says, and you can go into all the details here. You can look up 5K1.1 under USSG, United States Sentencing Guidelines. Basically it says your sentence will be less, often considerably less, if you provide substantial assistance to authorities. In my own case or cases, I had a state misdemeanor case and then a federal felony case, and they were tied together. I was initially charged with tampering with evidence, and that was allegedly removing batteries from a touch-tone dialer. And I know, pretty serious. And also having something to do with the disappearance of an instruction sheet that explained how to use a tone dialer. And I was with myself. We were at a ham radio flea market, actually, myself and two people I knew. Actually, one person I knew and his friend came along. The car was parked in a place that the police wondered why this car is parked. And the car just sort of searched the car illegally. The police just searched the car because there was a broken window. They thought it was a stolen car. It wasn't, but they searched through it and they found a couple of tone dialers in the car, and they were like, so then they were like, what is this? So they did some investigation. They took it back to the police station once we came back to get the car, and we were in a holding area waiting for them to decide what they were going to figure out to charge us with, if anything. And that's when the batteries disappeared from a tone dialer, and the instruction sheets also disappeared. And ironically, the tone dialer in question, it wasn't my tone dialer, and the instruction sheet did not go into my underwear, went into somebody else's underwear. But I kept my mouth shut about any of that. But I was unwilling to testify against anyone else, and I was the person whose car it was, so they charged me. They said, if you don't tell who was involved with this, then you're going to be charged. And they came up with some misdemeanor that was going to, there's some Pennsylvania misdemeanor that says if you possess something that could be used to commit telephone fraud, then that's a misdemeanor. But they couldn't charge me with, they couldn't prove he could do that, so they just charged me with tampering with evidence, because I wasn't going to say, well, he did that. He took the batteries out and he put the instructions down his shorts. So I kept my mouth shut. It was my car, so I took the charge. Ironically, one of the guys, well, I don't know if it's ironic, but one of the guys, my friend's friend, was a co-defendant in fiber optics case. I didn't know that at the time, but he did tell me he was under probation or parole or something, so I didn't want him to get in trouble. So in any case, so
and that friend later turned out to be an informant.
Yeah. I didn't know. I just knew he was a hacker guy, but I didn't know he was a significant informant in this case. That happened actually before he informed on Fiber's case before this thing happened with me. But I didn't know that they were connected. In any case, a year or so went by, and then this thing with the Secret Service came up with me. And to make a long story short, after I was arrested for possessing hardware and software that could be misused, according to government, for the unauthorized access to telecommunications services, a newspaper article appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which alerted someone who I was here with at the very first Hope Conference, who he and I went in on a deal where I would purchase a bunch of quartz crystals and he would purchase a bunch of really small tone dialers, and he sold the tone dialers on that end of this room, and I sold crystals on this side of the room, and then people built red boxes with these parts. And
it's another page of history in the Hotel Pennsylvania.
Right in this room. I was like right here, where we didn't have the stage right here. This was like a big expo room for the first Hope. But anyway, sold a lot of crystals, like it cost, for like $1, and it was just basically as a community service to the hacking community here. But in any case, many months later, when this article appeared in the Inquirer, he saw this and he freaked out. He called, and what he was doing, he was actually building and selling red boxes. I had never sold a red box to anybody. I was never charged with selling a red box to anybody. I wasn't even charged with using